Hello.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right.
Good, good, good. We haven't talked that much lately. Uh,
Yeah,
I,
I've been doing a lot of work and hating life.
oh, sorry to hear that. I heard you were like going back to school, right?
Yeah, I'm still doing that.
How's that going?
It's going all right. Aside from, I learned recently that you can be up to a week late on something and only get a 10% reduction. So my procrastination has worsened.
Yeah, that's not great. I feel like that's just a policy that's gonna bring out the worst in people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Um. Okay. Well, anyway, we're live now. If you want to go on camera, you can. If you don't want to, that's fine too. Um. So I oh, actually I need to go grab my phone. I have on my phone a list of questions that I was going to ask you. These are like questions that I use as like conversation prompts. So give me like 30 seconds. I'll grab that.
All right.
Okay. All right. So actually, let me go ahead and start off with one of my favorite ones. What's something that you think people should value that they don't value?
Hmm. That's a real hard one right there.
It's supposed to be, right? I mean, these are supposed to like provoke discussion. So,
I suppose like the one thing I think a lot of people lack is like intellectual curiosity. So I'd say a lot of people don't value that in today's world, or really any day's world.
okay. Do you think that's at all like a personality issue, or do you think that that's something that people can change, or what?
I wouldn't. I don't know if I would call it a personality issue. I think most people can get through their lives without developing like a good sense of that, and it makes people's lives probably. I wouldn't say necessarily better on the whole, but it makes things easier for people.
It makes things easier for people to not be intellectually curious. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because it takes a lot of time to have a well developed, thought out opinion. And when you can devote that time to other aspects of your life, like work or, friends and family, rather than spending all that time trying to find out, well, what's the truth of this actual thing? What's the actual correct choice here?
So it
When you got
sound
all.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was basically just going to repeat what I just said.
Oh, okay. Well, it sounds like you're making a case against intellectual curiosity right there, right? Because you're saying it's costly in terms of like time and effort that can be spent on other things.
Yeah, I think it's important, but yeah, it does take a lot of time to actually delve into those types of topics. So I think it makes people's lives easier to just go through your daily aspects. But I think people should value it because I think it makes a better person.
Okay, they should value it because it makes a better person, and it does that apparently like more effectively than spending your time on other stuff like uh the other things you mentioned, work, family, things like that.
Yeah, I think if you spend that time to actually be more interested in what the world is about, I think it makes you a better, more well-rounded person who can contribute to your overall community rather than just your soul, like a nuclear family or your workplace, but contribute to the community as a whole and have the correct decisions to help out everybody instead of just like your insular circle.
Okay. Uh how do you think that works? Like how does being intellectually curious make you better able to contribute to your community?
Well, let's take for example COVID-19. Like I'd say the people who weren't putting on masks and who weren't getting vaccinated, I would say that they lacked a great deal of intellectual curiosity because none of those people were actually looking into the data. They were just getting something read to them by like Tim Pool or who's that one guy who said that he was like the grandfather of mRNA technology.
I don't know who the person is that you're referring to, but yeah, like various media figures were against masking, obviously.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people took their cues from those media personalities without actually trying to see, like, what are the people who are actually in this field talking about in regards to this. And I think that hurts the community because you can see in places that were heavily Republican or who were heavily rural, places with less internet access, less educational standards. These places were the most common to have less vaccines and less mask usage, as well as having higher fatality rates with COVID-19.
So you were saying like people didn't really look into the data very much, and but my experience with people is that regardless of which side of that issue you're on, most people didn't look at the data very much, right? Even most people who did wear masks didn't really look at the data very much.
Yeah, I would agree with that definitely, but I think the people who were actually like looking into the data would have ended up on the side of wearing a mask or getting vaccinated.
Yeah, but I mean that's like probably less than 1% of the population or something like that, right?
Yeah, most likely.
And also even people who looked into the data, like you would have to be like looking into it in a particular way, right? Because there are definitely people uh who were very invested in that issue, who kind of like uh spent a lot of time engaging with it, and so in that sense you could say they looked into the data, but I don't think that's what you mean, right? I don't think you just mean like that people should spend time investing in.
Yeah, I suppose when I say intellectual curiosity, one of the things that's rolled into that is having a decent degree of media literacy to know what you should be looking at, to know what is more likely to be like more fake news oriented or something like that. And I think that's kind of rolled into that idea.
That media literacy is rolled into intellectual curiosity.
Yeah, I believe that.
Um, huh. Yeah, I mean, it seems like if you're talking about the COVID thing, like that probably has more to do with media literacy than it has to do with intellectual curiosity, I would think.
Hmm.
Does that
Well, I
sound
think
right to you?
I think one of the things about intellectual curiosity is being open to new points of view. So, hmm.
So like, are you kind of getting at the fact that people kind of cloister themselves in their own media bubbles and only listen to people who agree with them, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say that's what I'm trying to get at here. But what you said earlier, that kind of stumped me a bit. So I got to think about it because it.
Because I think it's not hard to imagine a person who's intellectually curious, but yet like not media literate, and then they just walk away being a very committed anti-vaxxer or like anti-mask person or something, right?
Yeah, I suppose I can see where you're coming from there because yeah, I just whenever I think about somebody with intellectual curiosity, it's more so. I would imagine that that person would discover the concept of media literacy fairly quickly if they were actually intellectually curious about things.
Well, okay, discovering the concept of media literacy though doesn't necessarily entail that they have the same idea of media literacy that you have, though, right?
I suppose I can see where you're going with that, but
Because like a person who's very engaged in right-wing media circles is not going to have the same idea of media literacy that you have, but yet they may very well have some concept of media literacy, right? Like they think they know who they can trust and who they can't. So the problem is not that they're not engaging with the concept, right?
yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely something I'd need to think about there, but hmm.
It's funny on the intellectual curiosity thing too. Like, okay, I know I'm like kind of pushing back on this stuff a lot and trying to challenge you on it. I want to clarify, like I do generally agree that I would like people to be more intellectually curious than they are. But you know, it's easy to think of like counter arguments, counter examples, and stuff. But like a lot of conspiracy theorist type of people are very intellectually curious, right?
Yeah, I would say definitely to a certain degree, but I don't know. When it comes to like most of the conspiracy theorists I've talked to, sometimes it seems like they don't even really believe what they're saying. So I don't know how much stock I could put into that.
And you think they don't believe what they're saying, and therefore they're not curious? Is that?
Well, hmm. Well, I would say it definitely lends towards them being curious about different subjects in the world, but
I mean, like just anecdotally, I think conspiracy theorists tend to be some of the most curious people that I've met.
hmm. Hey, you know what? You're right.
Um. Okay. So then, maybe curiosity does get you somewhere, right? But it's like, it's kind of uh a a a road that can lead you many different places, right?
Yeah, but I think it's definitely a good starting point of something that people need to value more.
Yeah. Uh, I sort of think like what intellectual curiosity is more than anything else is like an anecdote or not anecdote, an antidote to stagnation, right? It's what prevents you from just being stuck in your ways forever.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of something recently. I was working on a dude's truck and I was checking him out, and he was like 80, and he started talking about different people in different industries and how electric vehicles were going to take over and how technology is always changing and people who don't adapt to it die. And he said, "But I'm never going to learn how to use a computer. Never have, never will." Like after like a 10-minute spiel on how people need to adapt to technology, he's like, "I'm not doing it."
Well, I mean, it's funny. Like, if his thing is like you're gonna do it or else you're gonna die, it's like, well, if you're 80, your attitude about it may be I'm not gonna last that long anyway, so it's not worth my time. I don't know.
I don't know. That just reminded me of that conversation. It absolutely flabbergasted me when he said that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like trying to come up with a charitable interpretation of that, right? It may like perhaps what he might be getting at is like, well, this is what young people should do to adapt for the future, but I'm not going to be around for the future, so I'm not thinking too much about that.
The only problem with that is he's had about 2 decades to start.
Yeah, well, we don't. He Well, I guess I don't know. I mean, you may have had more of a conversation with him, but I don't know whether he is saying that he was right to not do it during those 2 decades.
I would imagine he wasn't saying he was right to not do it. I would imagine he just didn't want to put in the effort.
Hmm. Um. All right. Let me pull out another question here. Okay.
Let's make this one a little more shallow.
Well, I'm like purposely trying to ask provocative ones that we can have a lot. I do like to challenge people. I keep like a permanent list of these questions so that I can just like inject them into conversations to have interesting stuff to add whenever whenever we need stuff to talk about. And I do this because I'm not very good at coming up with like spontaneously coming up with conversation topics. But if I like have a list to refer to, then I can do it. And that has actually worked very well for me, like to compensate for that shortcoming. But,
All right, let's get into it.
all right, the next one. Would political discussions and streams be better if we could never see the faces of the participants?
I think they would be a lot more racist.
If we
I think
could not see the faces, they'd be more racist.
Yeah, if I couldn't see your face, like I the way I see it is like if somebody's on a camera, somebody is far less likely to be incredibly vitriolic to them. So like you're not going to see as much bigotry, you're not going to see as much hatred, and you're not going to see as much of the negative side of humanity. But if you're in an anonymous chat room and nobody's face is on the screen, nobody's real name is anywhere, you're liable to start hearing some really nasty shit.
Okay, so I guess you're thinking of it almost like the stereotypical like Call of Duty lobby or something like that, right? With is that kind of where you're going with this?
Oh yeah, I heard some crazy stuff in Call of Duty.
Yeah, I never got into Call of Duty, but it has that reputation, right? That you would just go into it and people are just shouting slurs left and right, and it's just like I don't know, a breeding ground for all kinds of like hateful stuff.
Yeah, back in the day, if you were playing Call of Duty and you didn't hear the N word at least 3 times, something was terribly wrong.
Yeah, for real. It's like, are you having a medical emergency or something? Like, I mean, although I didn't play Call of Duty, I did used to play League of Legends, which is similarly a toxic reputation. Um, okay, so what do you think about it, okay, if you think it would be worse to not see people's faces then uh, do you think that effect applies to like Discord voice chats?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What's your experience with that?
Just like whenever there's like 2, 3, or 4 people with their cameras on, there's just a lot less name calling. There's a lot less like "fuck you, you're wrong" type of stuff going on. But when there's no camera on, people are far more likely to like dehumanize the person they're talking to and treat them like they're nothing.
Okay. Well, you don't have your camera on right now. Maybe I gotta get started. I'm behind the curve. Um, but okay. Do you ever catch yourself doing that? Do you think you treat people worse when they don't have their camera on?
Oh no, I'm an equal opportunity hater. Like if somebody doesn't have their camera on or has their camera on, I will be incredibly vitriolic if they deserve it. I won't be vitriolic if they don't. It really just depends on what that person's saying, how they're acting, and how they're treating the people around me.
Okay, what do you think is different about you that you're not susceptible to this bias that other people are?
I lack a lot of shame. And I'm generally I've never really cared about other people's opinions on how I act. Uh, at least I'd like to think that about myself. It could be a whole host of different things
I
that
tend to
are wrong
not
with me.
believe people when they say that.
Yeah, there's probably some deeper thing hiding in my conscious, like just way back in there. But that's how I feel about myself.
Hmm. Okay, so it's this like let me think. How do I put this then? So you think seeing people's face, it kind of like provokes some kind of like sympathy response that in a lot of people, but not in you.
Yeah, I think it's basically like if you see somebody's face, it's like, okay, this is an actual human being that I'm talking to with thoughts and feelings. Whereas if you're just hearing their voice, you don't have that visual connection that you would make with those people.
Okay, so if you don't experience this very much, is it like how where does your understanding of this come from?
I think probably just from some psychology stuff I've read that I couldn't really recall too deeply, and then also like being in different voice chats and seeing this kind of occur where people will calm down or be like incredibly vitriolic. I think people even still are a lot more even tempered if they are on camera themselves as well.
They're more even tempered if they are on camera.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think in general, if you know that other people can see your face, you're also less likely to say a bunch of like vitriolic stuff as well.
Um, I wonder which direction that goes if it's true, right? Like, do you think uh going, like, if I go on camera, does that make me nicer, or does being nicer make me more willing to go on camera?
Yeah, that'd definitely be an interesting thing to figure out. I think more sociable people are more likely to have their camera on a lot.
Uh-huh.
And generally, more sociable people are better at conversation and navigating like different social cues. So they're also probably more likely to go on camera as well.
So okay, so if that's true that they're better at navigating social cues, I would expect that to be like related to the response that you're describing to other people's facial expressions, right? Like the whatever sympathy response gets evoked by seeing another person on camera, like you have to be sensitive to whatever is going on with the other person emotionally, right? Or I guess I could just put it as empathy, right?
Yeah.
Um. Okay, so you let me see. Uh. So how do you think this applies to like the contrast between TV versus radio political commentary?
Specifically in regards to political commentary.
Yeah, because like talk radio is a different beast from political television, right?
Hmm. Yeah, the only problem with that question is I haven't listened to a lot of political commentary on the radio, so I wouldn't be able to really engage with that level of it. I've heard like occasionally I would be in like somebody's car when I was like 14, and they're listening to Rush Limbaugh talk about gay people with AIDS and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but aside from that, yeah, I haven't really listened to long form political commentary on the radio. I don't really listen to a lot of like podcasts or anything like
I
that.
was about to ask about podcasts, yeah. Because I was gonna say there's probably like, well, actually, I know there are people who have done like podcasting and have also been on TV, and I was gonna ask like if you notice any difference between that same person's like what type of conversational style they employ when they're in one medium versus the other.
Well, specifically for that, I might actually have something to talk about there. You ever heard of, I think it was Nick Mullins?
I don't think I know who this is.
Uh, have you ever heard of oh God, have you ever heard of the podcast Come Town?
No.
Okay, well, there's a podcast where they say some like really edgy shit.
Okay.
And one of the main guys of that, Nick Mullins, I remember seeing him on. There was a compilation of him on something called like Red Eye or Red Line on Fox,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tell from if you've seen him on that podcast, and then you watch him on that Red Line thing, you can tell that he's really pulling back his jokes because there's so much stuff he can't say on TV.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But that's pretty much the only thing I could really think of in relation to both of those mediums.
Huh. Um. Would you want to do something different if you were on one medium versus the other? Like if you had to make a TV appearance versus would you talk differently than you would in a Discord call?
If I were going on a TV show, yeah, I think it really depends on whether or not like because I would assume for like a podcast you're talking to a more insular audience, and if you're invited onto like a television program, you're being broadcasted to a more national audience. So I think if it were me personally, I would probably moderate the stuff I'm saying and try to project more empathy out to the types of people I'm talking to try to get them back to either my position or to my podcast where I can say where I can say the other stuff.
Okay. You used to have a website, and I think do you still keep up with that?
No, basically, I bought in for like a year for like $40, and then when it came time to renew, they were like, "Okay, now it's going to be $150 for a year," and I was like, "Nah."
Okay. Well, anyway, like when you were doing your website, are there any kind of like comparable things that you were thinking about how to like do your writing?
Well, I think with all the writing I was doing, it was I was aiming it at a kind of right of center audience, and trying to promote empathy to that side to specifically get them on the issues that I wanted them to agree with me on to try and move things forward. That was kind of my public facing position, was to say, hey, we're all suffering due to these issues, and here's why you should care about it.
Uh-huh.
Like, I
Um,
think,
so as far as I know, I don't think you ever showed your face on your website though, right?
no, I never showed my face on the website at all, no.
It's interesting though because you were just saying like you think maybe people showing their faces might be a good way to elicit empathy from others, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Do you think that that's as true? Well, I guess it can't be as true with a photograph as it is with a real time conversation, but I imagine some of that effect would still be there.
Yeah, I would think it probably would be, but I don't think I ever got around to like making like an author profile or anything. But now that you mention it, I think that would actually probably be a good idea to put on there if I
Mm-hmm.
were to do the website again.
Mm-hmm. I've asked a few other people this same question, and like most, I think the majority answer I've gotten is that I think most people seem to think it would be better to for people to not show their faces when they're doing political commentary, and so some of the reasons I've heard have to do with it either being like too distracting or too like emotionally manipulative.
I
Uh,
mean, I don't know specifically how they were using the term emotionally manipulative, but personally, I think that's too big of a loaded word there, because like manipulation, depending on how it's used, can be a very effective and moral tool.
Yeah, well, that's my wording, so that if it's a loaded term, that's my fault. But basically, like what I was getting at was like, there are a lot of things that can influence the listeners to be more or less sympathetic to the person who they're listening to, and a lot of those things um are like okay, for example, like the physical attractiveness of the person who's speaking, right? Like
Yep.
uh, so you like if you're doing a debate like one person can just have an advantage over the other one going into it just because they're better looking, right? And I think um a lot of the people who are watching the debate may not even like be aware of the effect that that's having on them, or at least they may not have it in mind while while doing it.
Yeah, if Scarlett Johansson swapped bodies with Chomsky, I'd probably be a communist at this point.
It's an interesting thing with women though, because I think like with women I think people kind of like infantilize them a lot. So it's like I think for women being attractive, like it gives them an advantage in terms of like commanding people's attention, but it also gets people to take them less seriously. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd agree with that in general. Yeah.
uh so that makes me wonder like well, what if we did debates where like everyone's voice was disguised and everyone's identity was disguised and everyone's physical appearance was disguised, and all you see is like a transcript of the debate. Now obviously this isn't what people are generally interested in in consuming, right? Like that, like good luck convincing Twitch poll people to go read transcripts of debates instead of listening to people yell at each other. But if they were doing that, they would then be like judging the debate uh on the content of what is said and not just on the well, and less on the stylistic presentation of the people participating.
Well, I think this kind of comes around to the idea of whether political entertainment is a good force in the world or not. Because, like, I personally, I think that the idea of having these kind of performances where people showcase themselves and people spread their particular political message I think is probably more important. More important to not getting rid of that, because if people were just doing transcripts and stuff, I don't think people would watch any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of important that people become more politically aware and more politically active. But I don't know if it really translates, because a lot of the Twitch stuff just stays on Twitch. I don't really know how effective it is, and that's kind of what I'd have to see to know whether or not we should just get rid of the whole thing entirely.
Yeah, I mean, Twitch isn't the only game in town, though, right? As far as online political commentary, there's plenty of YouTube stuff. There's other streaming platforms too.
Yeah, there are, but I'd kind of really when I say Twitch, I kind of mean just the overall online political sphere, which is like audio-visual content.
Well, if you mean the overall online political sphere, then I wonder, like, why do you doubt that it's effective? Because isn't that where like the majority of political messaging takes place now?
I wouldn't really roll like mainstream politicians into that. Uh, but
Why
yeah,
not?
because I don't really see them as being like in that kind of sphere. They're more of like the mainstream kind of buttoned up suit and tie types.
Well, in terms of their aesthetic, sure they are, but I mean they're also taking part in this online sphere of political discussions, right? I mean they have, you know, like a lot of their campaign, messaging and apparatus consists of you know websites and videos and so on, right? They're not just appearing on the news the way that presidents would have done 40 years ago.
Yeah, but I don't think they're really participating in an overall. I mean, they're participating in an overall discussion, but they really aren't discussing things with people, which is kind of what I would consider like the kind of quote unquote Twitch poll community.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for the most part, they're not like actually doing Twitch poll stuff, right? I mean, we've had a couple exceptions to that, but like I think there was a stream of like Bernie Sanders or AOC or people like that have done streams before, but generally no.
That
Um,
recent thing with I think it was like Ro Khanna or something.
yeah. Although I think that was what wasn't that in them? They were like inviting a bunch of streamers into the more like traditional media sphere rather than the other way around, or am I wrong about that?
I would think. I don't know. It really depends on your perspective, but I think I don't know. Would you consider like Brianna Wu? Is she more of like a Twitch poll type person or a mainstream politics type person?
I don't really know. I mean, like I'm only a little bit familiar with Brianna Wu, but I guess from the impression that I have is maybe she's closer to a Twitch poll type of person, but obviously she has mainstream connections.
Yeah, because I think she's the one who set up that meeting. So I would think I don't know. I would think it would be more. I would more personally consider that like a Twitch poll type person inviting a politician to take part in that community to have broader outreach to the demographics of those communities.
Well, for sure, the goal of it was to have outreach to the audiences of the streamers. Like that makes sense, of course. I didn't really watch very much of that event. I saw a couple clips of it, and from what I did see, it looked like it very much had the appearance of like a traditional mainstream media event where it was like people sitting around in front of. I think they were in front of the White House, weren't they, or something like that? And
Yeah, they
uh,
were supposed to go into the White House at some point, but apparently the White House was like, nah.
um, huh. What do you make of the idea that that seeing people's faces is distracting you from what they're saying?
Oh, that's an interesting question right there. I don't know if I would really say it distracts from what they're saying, but it definitely adds like a layer to what they're saying, where you're interpreting their words. You know what? Actually, that does sound like a distraction to me. Like you're interpreting their words differently based on like their different the way in which they're moving their mouth, their face muscles twitch, stuff like that. Little imperceptible cues that you pick up on. Yeah, I would say it's a distraction.
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, I stream with Flowtrace most of the time. He's like my, regular co-host, and he has a cat. And every time his cat appears on camera, I get distracted by it. I always looking at the cat. But yeah, I mean, obviously, you always have the option. Like even if there's a video about political issues, you can just listen to it without watching it. But I wonder if like just even like presenting the visual stimulus is kind of like enticing people's attention away from the more substantive content of the video.
Oh, I wouldn't think it's really taking away from the substance of what's being said. I would say more so that it's kind of adding to it. It's something else you're paying attention to, but I don't think it necessarily takes away from what's actually being said.
But well, I mean, like, isn't that the point of a distraction though? Is it takes attention away from the subject at hand?
Well, now you've got me.
It's competing for your attention, right? um, yeah. So now I still do go on camera, and generally speaking, I think I'm fine with it, and it's mostly for the reason that you said earlier, which is that I think it draws people in. People are interested in seeing that. I don't really mind going on camera, like whatever. It doesn't bother me. So whatever. But it's somewhat attention grabbing. But in order for me to believe that it's attention grabbing, like in an advantageous way, I also have to believe that it could be attention grabbing in a disadvantageous way, right? Like I don't think you can employ it to your advantage without understanding that it also distracts from the very thing that you're trying to use it towards. But
yeah, I suppose I see what you're getting at there.
All right, let's go to the next question. All right, what is the role of blame in moral systems?
The role of blame in moral systems.
Yeah.
Why do you keep hitting me with such easy questions?
Well, I mean, you know what? If you want easy questions, if you're unhappy with the questions I'm asking, we can you can ask questions instead.
How do you feel about the current conflict in Israel and Palestine?
It's sad.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
Did you see the recent thing about the hospital?
No. I know that there's a long time history of Hamas attacks being carried out from hospitals, but presumably with the idea that when they get retaliated against, the hospital will get hit, and then they get like a PR victory because they can go look, Israel attacked the hospital. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what occurs generally because I think Hamas has their headquarters in the biggest hospital in the Gaza Strip. But basically, what happened recently was a missile of some kind went off in basically the courtyard of a hospital. I think it was Al-Ari Arab Hospital, and basically Hamas's Ministry of Health sent out a report that said 500 people had been killed by an Israeli missile strike. And people started just talking about that pretty much immediately as it happened. You had a bunch of different high-profile streamers, celebrities, politicians talking about how this was a disgusting act by Israel. But now it's looking like from a bunch of different governmental reports that it's more likely that Hamas actually fired a missile and it went off it went off course and hit the courtyard of that hospital. And then the pictures from it show basically a very small radius around like the hospital's courtyard where like it blew up a couple of cars, and so it's very unlikely that it killed like 500 people.
Okay, so some kind of accidental discharge that was reported as a much bigger attack than it really was, and but people bought into it.
Well, I'd say less of an accidental discharge and more so that Hamas has access to very, very low technology weapon systems, and that weapon systems failed guiding the missile, and it just dropped down there. But they meant to shoot the rocket off. They probably meant for it to hit Israel.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I don't know any more information about that than what you've just told me, but obviously it's that there are many terrible things about that situation, right? Like an attack like that would only be happening in a bad situation in the first place, and then the attack itself probably only makes things worse.
So that brings me to my next question.
Yeah, go for it.
What do you think the role will be of misinformation in warfare going forward?
Oh, I don't necessarily think that it would change very much because misinformation has always been a big part of warfare for, you know, as long as there's been organized warfare, right?
Oh, hold on a second.
Okay. Vels in my chat says the hospital attack was almost certainly a Hamas whoopsie because if it was an IDF weapon, the damage caused would be much greater. It basically blew up a few cars in a parking lot, didn't really leave a crater, unless Israel was using captured Hamas weapons to do a false flag, but that seems extremely unlikely.
Yeah, I really don't think the IDF would use any weapons they got from Hamas because the weapons Hamas has access to are like old and they're just terrible because it's got to go through like a humanitarian corridor. So it's probably smaller weapons with different a lot smaller loads.
Do they not have any ability to manufacture weapons within Gaza?
I mean, they can probably. I think they can manufacture like very crude missiles, but I really don't think they'd be able to mass manufacture like larger missiles with. It's definitely not the word load I'm looking for. Payload.
Okay.
That's also not the word I'm looking for, but it's close enough.
Okay. They would not be able to make ones that are very powerful, I guess is what you're getting at.
Yeah, because it's not that they don't have the technology for it; it's that they don't have the resources for it. Because I'm pretty sure in the Gaza Strip they have some of the most educated people.
Hmm.
I think it's like 80% of them have college degrees.
Really?
Yeah, I read that like a week ago. Let me see if I can find a source on that.
I know they have one of the youngest populations in the world. I thought it was like half of them were under 18 or something, but maybe if 80, it might be 80% of adults or something.
Yeah, let me see if I can figure that out. I remember reading that and I was like, okay, that sounds insane. I really wouldn't think somebody, maybe it wasn't specifically in the Gaza Strip, maybe it included the West Bank as well, who knows? Okay. But yeah, I definitely saw that they have a very high college degree attainment rate compared to even like Western nations.
Huh, that is interesting. Are they allowed to attend like Israeli colleges?
Oh. Now that I do not know. I don't think generally that Israel allows like Palestinians to cross the border. I would assume that they don't allow that to happen because a lot of people in like the Gaza Strip are separated from people they know in like the West Bank and such.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there would be any kind of retaliation from Hamas, but I could definitely see like Hamas like seeing somebody coming back from an Israeli college and thinking that they're like a traitor or something.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, hasn't Hamas only been in charge there for maybe like 10 or 15 years or something? So if there's high college attainment rates, it might be like because people were going to Israeli colleges 30 years ago or something.
Yeah, I think it was like 2007 or 2008 when Hamas got voted in, and then they haven't allowed elections since.
Okay. So you're asking this question about like what's the role of misinformation in warfare going forward?
Yep.
Yeah, and I feel like the the only thing that's really changed is that we now have things that we have systems of distributing information more efficiently, and so that would apply to regardless of whether that information is correct or not. It's just easier to get your information out there, or your propaganda, or your whatever it is. So I don't think that that's gonna like fundamentally change the strategic role of misinformation. I think it.
Well, I think one of the major issues is that, like, we don't really engage in like active warfare with different nation states anymore. It's mainly just proxy wars between the major players. And so I think misinformation is a lot more effective now because it can cut off support between these different geopolitical conflicts that each country is engaged in with their own populace, whereas it would be a lot harder for that to occur if the country you were in was actively engaged in a military conflict with somebody.
Huh. Well, maybe. I mean, I guess it depends. Like, is that conflict going on in your nation, or is that conflict just going on with your nation? Right? Because like, I'm trying to make this like historical comparison where it's like, okay, imagine, the British and French are at war with each other, but the war is taking place in some distant colony. I don't know why that wouldn't be just as susceptible to misinformation.
Yeah, I suppose I can see what you're saying there. Yeah, 'cause I think it really requires for like a war to get like broad popular support. It does kind of require for something to have actually happened on the mainland or at least one of the territories that the nation owns. So, for example, like the Vietnam War, that was like most Americans didn't have beef with Vietnam. It was mainly like a war against China on a different front.
Uh, Probably. Well, not so much against China because China was unfriendly to the Viet Cong, though.
Oh, was it the Soviets?
Yeah, it was more against the Soviets, and in
I
fact,
need to read up on history.
yeah, after the U.S. withdrew from Vietnam, the Chinese invaded Vietnam like almost right after that and tried to overthrow the Viet Cong,
Hmm.
and failed.
Yeah, it's really hard to fight against like an insurgent population when they have support.
Hmm. Um, yeah, it's just I don't necessarily think that this is any different today from what it would have been historically. I mean, armies have employed spies, for thousands of years, right?
Hmm.
And the whole the whole point of a spy is misinformation, right?
Well, I think the major thrust of like espionage is getting information on the different facets of like how other nations gather intelligence, how other nations conduct their military technology advancements, things like that. I don't think spies were as useful in spreading misinformation
Oh, what
back
I
then.
meant is like in order to even be a spy, they have to employ like a subterfuge, like they're to even do their job, right? Like
Uh,
their job is kind of like inherently deceptive.
yeah, I can see what you're saying there.
And in some cases, I mean, they were actually like spreading, propaganda, against the country that they were spying on. But yeah, I understand. Like, it's mostly like it's an information gathering process, but it's done by way of deception.
I think some of the more interesting ways in which espionage was employed was when they were spreading like factual stuff, like did you ever hear about how they basically made a manual for sabotage, and they got people to smuggle those manuals into occupied France?
No, I don't know this story.
Well, basically, the U.S. government designed a manual to do things in which it would slow down efficiency in different parts of Nazi-occupied France without actually getting anyone hurt. So basically, they would there were different lists of things you could do, and some of those things were like putting like ground up pumice stones in different machinery, putting it into the oil, and just sabotaging things in ways where you would not be a suspect for it. Teaching people how to commit arson, teaching people how to work slowly, teaching people how to basically just be annoying as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's some of the more interesting stuff that spies were engaged in that also helped slow down the war effort in different occupied territories there.
Okay. So maybe when you were asking about the misinformation stuff, it seems like you weren't getting at that kind of thing. Maybe you were getting at more like the ability of one nation to spread their propaganda within another nation. Is that kind of more what you're getting at?
Yeah, mainly the idea of like swaying the population to support things that go against the interest of their own nation.
Uh-huh. Ever like and you mean like intentionally with the support of a foreign nation or no?
Uh, could you expound upon that question?
Yeah, because like there could be a movement within the United States that has nothing to do with any foreign nation. Uh and that movement could disagree about what is in the best interests of the United States, right?
Yeah, so something like that, like popularizing different groups within the United States by spreading propaganda for them, or by sending them money in some way, or by just spreading misinformation about different aspects of like Ukraine, like really pumping up the number of like Nazis that were in the different forces there, getting people to reduce support for that. Uh, stuff like that.
Okay, okay. So that doesn't necessarily require misinformation though, right? It's just like a certain type of contrary messaging.
I think a lot of the tactics that have been employed by like the different Russian like troll farms and such, I have explicitly relied on misinformation about the facts on the ground, and like especially Ukraine.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, sure. So I'm not saying that like misinformation doesn't get used this way. I'm just saying that like the particular thing that this category of behaviors that you're talking about doesn't actually require misinformation, right? Like you could just um like if all you want to do is push the population's sympathies in one way or the other, that doesn't necessarily require you to have to be lying to them to do that. Although you may very well be lying to them while doing it.
yeah, I would agree with that because some of the best propaganda has aspects of truth, or is true in its or isn't true in its entirety.
Yeah, I would think it would almost have to be if they want people to believe it, right? It's either got to have it's either got to have some like elements of truth to it, or else it has to have like it has to be very convincing fiction that you know comports well with people's expectations of what is true.
Yeah.
Um, and like I don't know. I wonder about the thing where like is people's political messaging or propaganda techniques getting any more sophisticated? And because if I look at recent history, it seems to me like the answer is no, probably not. Like that, like they're just distributing their messages more efficiently, but not really like composing them in any more sophisticated ways. But uh, but I wonder if like in any new technology might change that, right? So okay, actually, maybe this is an interesting answer to your question. If you're if your thing is about like what's the future of misinformation, then I wonder if like artificial intelligence and deepfakes should be part of that conversation.
Yeah, I'd say that definitely be a major part of the conversation, as well as kind of like the introduction of AI technology has already like cast doubt on different things and has given people an avenue to attack what are even like real photographs. Like, did you see that? Did you see that Ben Shapiro where he posted that picture of the burned baby?
No.
Okay, well, he posted a picture of a burned Israeli baby, and people were calling that AI because they put it into like an AI detector, and it said like 70-80% chance it's AI, even though they're relying on like a tool that isn't infallible. They're relying on a tool that detects things that are out of the norm when the picture is already out of the norm, because most of the time you don't see pictures of burned babies.
Uh-huh. So
So I,
basically people were accusing him of faking this photo, and he was using the photo in his commentary on the Israel Hamas situation. Is that what's going on?
yep.
Yeah, I've got to expect that there's going to be a lot more incidents like that to come, right? Because like, um, because fake pictures really can fool people, just as much as a fake written news report can. And then as long as we know that fake pictures can fool people, that opens the door for the type of accusation that you're talking about, where it's like, anytime you don't want people to believe someone else's messaging, you can just like say it's AI generated or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, like how long do we have until AI is a legitimate defense in a court case?
Well, I've got to believe like we're probably already there. Like even if it hasn't happened yet, like I think we're already at the state of technology where photographs can be faked well enough that they would at least fool some people some of the time, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like a potentially viable defense to claim that any particular photograph is fake. And in a way, we've been lucky to live in a historical time when it was fairly easy to know that photographs we saw were almost certainly real, right? I mean, photoshopping existed, right? Uh, but it wasn't like so sophisticated that people just always or I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that actually. Maybe photoshopping is already the predecessor to this problem.
Yeah, did you ever see that picture of Stalin with that one dude they took out?
Oh, I'm not sure if I've seen the picture, but I think I have heard of this.
Let me see if I can find the picture. It's actually pretty incredible how they got rid of the person.
Yeah, I think I heard that it's like they tried to like scrub this person's face out of existence, right? It was like as if they were never there.
Here, I sent you the picture there.
Okay. I hope you don't mind. You don't mind if I like switch to the DMs and show them on screen or whatever.
Yeah, just make sure you're not looking at my social security number I typed right there.
Okay, I'll make sure to blow that up and put it full screen. Um, yeah, okay. So I guess the idea here is that this was the original photo is the top one with the guy in it, and then the bottom one I guess they must have like painted over it or something like that.
Yep.
Okay.
But
Huh.
like, if you saw that bottom picture without ever seeing the first one, you wouldn't assume something's wrong with it.
Yeah, you're probably right. I probably wouldn't. Well, it's just it wouldn't have occurred to me to look at it closely enough to even know, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess it was already possible to do things like that. But it does seem like we've at least lived in a historical time where usually if you saw a photo or actually even more so with a video, right? Like if you saw something on film, it very likely happened, right? Because
Yeah,
even like Hollywood movie quality special effects really don't look real enough well, maybe up until very recently, they didn't look real enough to make people think that this might have been a real event.
Yeah, I think the main issue with like AI is like it follows like the inverse of like CGI technology. Because back when CGI technology was first introduced, it was like, whoa, that's totally a real thing. But the more and more you see it, the more and more you know that it's fake. Whereas with AI, it's going to be the exact opposite. The longer it goes on, the better and better it'll be, and the harder and harder it'll be to tell it's fake.
I've never had that experience with CGI stuff, but I mean it might just be because I'm old enough that I grew up in the era of like very primitive CGI. Like I'm old enough to remember like Max Headroom and that kind of stuff, right? Like the very like blocky characters. The Max Headroom is a CGI character from the 1980s, and it looks like it could be on like a Nintendo 64 basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I never like did find CGI very convincing, but I mean that could still be like roughly consistent with what you're saying, because maybe like by the time it had gotten more sophisticated, I was already used to it. I remember being very impressed with Jurassic Park when that came out. Um, and it still didn't look totally real to me, but it did look to me like, oh, maybe this is the closest I've ever seen to a convincing video of something that I know didn't happen.
Yeah,
And
I think the problem with Jurassic Park as an example, because I was going to bring up Jurassic Park and then I thought about this, because the problem with that is that they used like a very good mix of practical effects as well as the CGI, so it kind of covers up the deficiencies.
yeah. Um, and then so Jurassic Park is like early 90s, and at the time that was the best like computer graphics I had seen, and then I think the next thing that probably like surpassed it convincingly would have been like, if people are gonna not like this take, but the Star Wars prequels, um which is not like, obviously they didn't look totally real or anything, but I think at the time that was the most impressive use of computer graphics I had yet seen in a movie.
Personally, I like the prequels.
Do you? Okay, so let's talk about the prequels. Then why do you like those?
I liked what's his name, Ja,
Jar Jar?
yeah, Jar Jar.
Why do you
I I was a kid when I was watching these, and I thought he was always like he was kind of funny, and I've especially liked him even more after seeing the whole Darth Jar Jar thing.
which for anybody that doesn't know, that's the conspiracy theory that like Jar Jar actually orchestrated all the events of the prequels.
If you go back and watch the prequels, it seems pretty clear to me.
Okay, I remember seeing that and being not very convinced of it at the time, but
That, okay, let me bring up something specific here. Okay, there is a scene where they are on a ledge and they are hanging off that ledge.
yeah, I've seen this.
You see that where he jumps down from the right of the frame, and then the robot, he's looking up to where Jar Jar would have been, and then he has to reposition to re-aim at him because he's just jumped like 5-10 feet. That is completely convincing to me. That sealed the deal. That is Darth Jar Jar right there.
Okay, what that convinced me of is just that it was poor editing and poor filmmaking.
Poor editing and poor. Why then would they have the robot look up to where he was and then look over there? That means it's not a mistake because they specifically had the robot look.
Okay, No, I think what it is like a cover up for a mistake. Because because I'm pretty sure what happened with those movies was that they filmed the live action scenes and then put the CG like on top of them, and the robots are CG, and Jar Jar is CG also, but but there was a live actor, playing his part in the scenes, and then they had to like cut him out, later and replace him with a CG character.
That sounds like Kami talk to me.
Okay.
I'm going to believe that till the day I die.
Okay, that's fine. I do think Jar Jar kind of gets excessively hated on because, like, even though I do think he is kind of like dumb and annoying, there are plenty of other Star Wars characters, even from the original trilogy, that it's like, is Jar Jar really actually worse than like C-3PO and the Ewoks and and so on? I think C-3PO is like kind of the sleeper, most annoying character.
Yeah, he seems pretty boring because he's more like an English gentleman slash butler.
I'm he rarely does anything useful also, and he's like frequently he's kind of mean to R2D2, and he's just like, I don't know, he's like naggy and negative, and he'll just say people like, oh, the probability that you'll fail is 99%. It's like, fuck off. I don't know.
I'm just not a fan of the British.
Okay. So like Alec Guinness, not a fan, or
Is he British?
yeah, he's the original Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I hate that guy.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I got American blood, so just hating the British, it's something deep in the core of my soul.
Oh, that reminds me. I should ask you about the Canada thing. Tell me about your hatred for Canada.
Oh, Canada. Man,
Yeah.
I just hate them so much. You know, they're always so smug when you talk to them too, because they'll talk about all the problems America is facing, and they'll talk about the political state of America. It's like, why aren't you talking about your own country, huh? Why are you always shitting on America? Go back to Canada, start talking about that stuff, improve that. But no, you got to come over here and pretend like you're better than us, even though you ain't got a single gun because you can't get one and you don't want one because you're scared of them.
I think it's pretty obvious why they would talk to us about American politics rather than talking to us about Canadian politics, right?
It's because Canadian politics don't actually matter past Canada's borders.
Well, we know more about, or they know more about American politics than we know about Canadian politics, right?
Yeah, because Canada's a boring place.
Because Canada's a boring place. Okay.
When was the last time they had some type of politician who was exciting? Can you name him?
I don't know that I would want to live in a place where the politicians are exciting.
You're telling me you wouldn't want to live in a place where Rob Ford was mayor?
Who's Rob Ford?
A crack-smoking mayor.
I probably don't want a crack-smoking mayor.
Why wouldn't you? He's up all night helping his constituents. The other politicians, the other mayors, they're sleeping at least 8 hours a day. This man is up all night thinking about his constituents.
I mean, he's up all night. I don't know if he's thinking about his constituents.
He's thinking about something, and that's all that matters.
Is that all that matters? Do you want a mayor who's just... That should be his campaign slogan. I'm thinking about something, and that's all that matters. I don't know. Would you vote for someone whose slogan was that?
I think I actually would, yes.
Would you? Okay. Vels in chat says, Americans, no other country's politics matter but ours because ours reach outside of our borders. Also, Americans, stop talking about our politics.
Are they a Canadian?
They're a Canadian, yeah.
Wow. Just wow.
Just wow, Vels. Wow.
How's your strategic maple syrup reserves doing?
I don't know. I'm in no position to answer that question. Maybe Vels can tell us about the strategic maple syrup reserves. He says the maple reserves are fine. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
Okay. You want to go to another question?
Yeah, let's hit up your list.
Okay. Do you want to skip the blame one, right? It sounded like you were not interested in that.
It's not that I'm not interested in it. I just see that going horribly for me.
Well, do you want to quickly say why that would be, or no?
I don't know. I feel like I haven't thought too deeply on it, and you're going to take me down a line of questioning, and at some point I'm going to decide this is my position, and then at another point, like 15 minutes later, I'll have to go, you know what, you're right.
You know, I purposely try to come up with questions that I think people haven't thought out very well. That is kind of part of the point, but it's not necessarily that I've thought them out very well either. Like this isn't one that I have like any kind of very strong opinion about. I've had a couple of conversations. Like these are questions that I've been over with other people before, but like as much of an opinion as I have is what I've taken out of the few conversations that I've had about these same questions.
I think the whole purpose of blame is that just to establish any kind of system that brings a sense of order, you need to have somebody responsible for something. So, but personally, I kind of believe, and I know you don't believe this, but I believe that people are going to do what they're going to do from pretty much the time of their birth. And technically, no one's responsible for their actions, but we have to act like they are.
Okay, why do we have to act like they are?
To establish a society that promotes like the most amount of goodness.
But if everyone's just going to do what they're going to do from the day they're born, then how is it even possible to establish a society that promotes anything? Aren't people just going to do what they're going to do regardless of the society they're living in?
Yeah, but they're going to do what they're going to do based on the environment in which they are raised.
They're going to do what they're going to do based on the environment in which they were raised. So that just makes it sound like the environment is responsible.
Oh yeah.
Okay, but so we need to like live in a world where we believe that the environment is responsible, but we still blame the people for what the environment brings out of them.
Yeah, because otherwise, if we can't hold people responsible for something, then we can't really justify punishing them for that thing.
What do we need to justify punishing them?
I suppose we don't need to justify it, but we do need to punish them, and I feel like people couldn't go on if they couldn't justify why we're punishing them.
I feel like we need to do things that are effectively punishments, but we don't need to think of them as punishments or justify them in terms of punishment.
I suppose not in terms of punishment, but I feel like we definitely need to justify it. Otherwise, we wouldn't feel good about it.
So like the things you're talking about justifying would be like, for example, putting people in prison. Is that the kind of thing you're getting at?
Yeah, if you couldn't justify locking somebody up in a small room for years at a time to yourself, I don't think it would go too well with the human psyche.
Because well, the vast majority of people shouldn't be locked up in a small room for years at a time, of course, but the few people that are, I think it's because they are very dangerous, right?
Yeah, but that's a justification in and of itself.
I know, but it's a justification that doesn't require anyone to believe like in responsibility or blame, right?
Damn it, you're right.
I mean, like, I feel like, you know, we would do the same thing to like a dangerous animal or even like an inanimate object if it's, you know, dangerous enough. Like if it's just this thing poses a risk to public safety, therefore we need to keep it away from the public, right?
I would appreciate it if you would stop making reasonable counters to what I'm saying.
Okay. I don't think you would appreciate it.
I don't know. I like to get combative with people when they really deserve it. And when people are being incredibly reasonable, I can't really get combative about it.
Well, maybe that's a good thing. Like, do you not like having discussions that are not combative?
It's not that I don't like it. It's just that I very much enjoy like a feeling of righteous indignation against another human being where I can absolutely unload all of my hatred into them.
Man, I feel like what you're describing is like the root of a lot of human evil.
I don't know. It's just like when I'm in a voice chat with somebody who's like talking shit about people I know, I just really enjoy using that anger against that person to make them like there have been people who I have talked with who are just very angry or very self-centered, and it's like I don't want this person to come here anymore because they're making everybody else angry, and so I use my hatred against that person to get them to not come back.
Do you ever try just like talking to that person and explaining the problem to them and asking them to cooperate?
Yeah, that's the first thing I do. And if that doesn't work, then I go to the anger and hatred.
I mean, I would think the well, okay, I guess it's going to depend what position that you're in with respect to that community, right? Like if you have no real power within that community except to like express your displeasure with that person, I don't know. I sort of feel like the way to do it is to just like you know well, start by expressing your displeasure to that person and see if you can get them to cooperate. If that doesn't work, maybe start expressing your displeasure about them to other people and see if you can like get more people on your side and see if you can like finagle them into cooperating just because the community is against them. And then if that doesn't work, then I think you just kick them out, right? And like, does that make sense?
I don't really think I don't really agree with kicking out like most people. Like if somebody's just being a complete shithead,
Yeah.
I think they should be allowed to be in a place. But if I can get them to leave with my own words and with my own the way I speak to them, then I think that's fine. Like if it's just from social interaction. But I think just forcing somebody out because they're annoying is kind of a dick move.
Well, I mean, if it's a dick move to force them out, then isn't it also a dick move to just like annoy them back?
Well, I mean specifically with forcing them out. I mean like actually taking like action where they aren't allowed to come back. I want them to leave of their own accord and maybe think about why this occurred.
Real man, I sort of feel like here's the type of thought process I would expect to arise out of that, right? Like if they're leaving a community where everybody was just being a jerk to them on the way out, then I would expect them to be like, well, I'm glad I left that community. Those were a bunch of jerks, and that's like probably the reflection that they're gonna have on it.
Well, the thing is, this generally comes from like this generally occurs after like weeks of like kindly trying to rationalize with them, empathize with their situation, suggesting ways they can improve themselves. And then like after a certain point, it's like this person's not going to change. They're going to act the same way over and over again. That's when I start doing that. So
Yeah.
before that point, like they've been treated with kindness, they've been treated politely, they've been having conversations with people. But after that, that's when it goes in like that.
Okay, so surely there is some point at which you would kick people out, though, right?
Yeah, if they were saying like, if they started talking about like genociding people and stuff like that, that's probably where I would kick somebody out. But if they're just being kind of annoying, and not like blowing an air horn into their microphone or something. If somebody was doing that, I'd probably kick them out. But if they're just being annoying, then I probably wouldn't kick them out.
You wouldn't kick them out, but you want them to leave.
Yeah, I feel like one takes away that person's. I'm not going down that line. Never mind.
Oh, like agency or free will or something like that? Is that where
I didn't say that at all.
yeah, I'm just wondering if that's what you were thinking. Well, I mean, it might be good to take away their like sense of control over the situation, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I suppose I could see where that might be helpful in it, but I don't know, I think if somebody chooses to do something, it's a lot more impactful to how they go about their future interactions.
Is it? Why would that be?
Well, this kind of goes into like like if somebody has like a drug addiction or something, forcing them into like a rehab, I think, is a lot less likely to incur good results than if they were to choose to go to that rehab of their own accord.
Yeah. I agree with that. But then like, okay, but the thing is that those two actions have require a different situation in order for them to be occurring in the first place. Like one situation is where the drug addict wants to quit and then they go to rehab voluntarily. The other one is where they don't want to quit and then people force them to go anyway, right? So it's not just a choice between two different actions. It's also the difference between two different scenarios.
Yeah, but I think the analogous part between them is that that in both situations you have somebody that's acting in a certain way that incurs like different negative consequences to both their life and the life of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think similarly when they're given a choice where they start feeling those negative consequences, like having people like tell them how their actions or how their words have made them feel, and they're given that choice to either continue on with what they're doing or stop what they're doing and reflect on their previous actions. I think it's analogous in that way.
I mean, there's a part of what you're saying that I agree with, which is that like you're not actually going to get an addict to quit unless you can get through to them emotionally. Like they have to actually want to quit, or else they're not going to. Like forcing them into rehab when they don't want to is very unlikely to work. So that's true. Um, but then like, but then the question is like, okay, given the scenario where they don't want to, like suppose you've done what you can do by talking to them and they still don't want to, would it then be better to like force them into rehab anyway, or would it be better to just throw up your hands and go like, oh well, I guess they're not gonna change?
Personally, I think making a situation where they can do the actions in a way that gives them time to change is probably the better course of action. But if we're saying in a world where they don't want to change at all, it might be it might be a good idea to force them into that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I sort of feel like if the only thing I cared about was just getting them to quit, then I think my answer would be that it would be better to force them into rehab. Um, but on the other hand, I sort of feel like if somebody doesn't want to quit, then I've kind of got in the back of my mind, well, they don't want to quit today, but maybe someday they will want to quit, and because that might eventually happen, um, it makes sense that I would not want to like damage their trust in me or damage my relationship with them if that turns out to be helpful in their future attempt to quit, right?
Yep.
And then beyond that, like hopefully the friendship has some value to you, like independently of whether it gets them to quit or not. I don't think you should be friends with someone just to get them to quit their addictions. But um okay, so it sounds like your thing about the blame, it is like we need. Well, I don't know. Maybe you might have retracted this now that we don't necessarily need blame to justify the things that we do to air quotes punish people.
Yeah, I think we agreed on that about 10 minutes ago.
Okay. Do you think there's any further role of blame in moral systems? Like, is there any like is there any truth to the idea that blame really exists, or like say something really can be your fault, or is there any like usefulness to applying the concept independently of whether it's literally true or not?
I think the only usefulness I could appeal to is that it kind of makes people feel good to blame somebody, but it's debatable how useful that really is.
I mean, that sounds kind of like sadistic the way that you're putting it, right? It's like people enjoy weaponizing blame to attack each other.
Yeah.
Uh, so maybe that's useful to the person who is gratified by it, but it's probably like a net negative, right?
Yeah, I think if we could get rid of the concept, it would probably be good. But I think the only situation in which blame would be good is where if we can't get rid of the concept, we can use it to benefit society as a whole somehow.
Hmm. Do you think there is any way to do that?
To get rid of it?
Oh, I guess what I meant was use it to benefit society.
Uh, I suppose you could use it against like influential people to create a position of power to make like an opening to it to where you can get somebody in who can like institute different policies that would actually help people. But aside from that, it's a lot more of a weapon than anything, and it
Oh,
really depends on the situation.
okay, so then the idea is like it's a weapon, but weapons can be useful. Like they can, uh, you can use it to take down someone who ought to be taken down, even if blame isn't actually like a very logical reason for it.
Yep.
Okay. Um. All right. I'll just go to another question. Uh. Okay, when should we intervene in other people's conflicts? And I wrote this before the Israel-Palestine thing was happening, so what I meant when I wrote it was like on an interpersonal level. When do you think it's a good idea to intervene in other people's conflicts?
Well, it depends on if we're talking about. It really depends on what we're talking about specifically. Like if we're talking about like in a utopian society where all we care about is like the moral good of things, it would have a different answer than if we're talking about current society. Because currently, I think we should probably intervene in any situation where the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. So, for example, like Ukraine, the benefits of us sending them weapons and artillery support and things of that nature is that every dollar we spend is the most effective dollar we've ever spent hurting the Russian Empire.
So okay, so let me try to understand this distinction that you're drawing because there's something about it that's like confusing me. Because you're saying like in an ideal society, well, then we would care only about the moral good or bad of those things. But I would have thought we should care about that whether our society is a utopia or not. And then also you're saying in a real world society, that we should do it whenever the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. But I would have thought we should do that whether we're in a utopian society or not.
Well, I'd say it's more so a distinction between like the outright moral good of something and like the promotion of like American hegemony.
What is the outright moral good of something? What does that mean?
Ah, well, I think the outright moral good would be like making sure that everybody is living in like a prosperous society and you know having. Oh God, you really got me on this one. I, you know, let me just explain kind of my outlook on it because
Okay, go for it.
I think specifically in like regards to something like Ukraine, the benefits outweigh the disadvantages because by supplying those weapons, we are reducing both the military power of the Russian state and the geopolitical influence the Russian state has on other places. And by doing so, we are promoting the values of American society and the ideals in which it rests, which I think are better ideals than in, for example, Russia or China. And by reducing the effectiveness of those opposing regimes, we are more likely to institute like democratic regimes in other countries and build our influence against them to buffer against the influence of like what I would describe as kind of an oligarchical regime in Russia.
Okay, so that's the advantages of it. What are the disadvantages of intervening in Ukraine?
Well, right now, the only real disadvantages are that it kind of hurts our position with our position in negotiating with Russia, and it kind of hurts our position with. I don't know. I can't really see a lot of disadvantages to helping Ukraine right now because it seems like it's a very effective way to promote our interest abroad without really causing a lot of damage to our interest domestically or abroad.
Well, I think some of the disadvantages are fairly obvious. Like it literally costs money and it prolongs the war, right?
Well, I don't know if prolonging the war in favor of the Ukrainian state is really a disadvantage.
I mean, people are getting killed every day in that war, right?
Yeah, but they're getting killed to prevent the Russian state from taking over parts of their country.
I know, but like, okay, if I'm trying to point out like what are the disadvantages of it, and then I point out a disadvantage, and you go, yeah, but disadvantage, right?
Okay, I suppose people dying is a disadvantage.
I should hope so, right? And even Russian people dying should be considered a disadvantage of it, right? I would hope.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say that's probably a disadvantage unless we're talking about like people in the Wagner group aside from the prisoners that got drafted.
Um, I like I I don't think you would just like wish death on a random Russian soldier. Like if like if like I understand you may think it's necessary to kill them in order to stop them from what they're doing, but but if you could stop them without killing them, would you consider that preferable, or would you actually rather that they die?
Yeah, stopping them without killing them would be preferable, but I don't see that as a legitimate way of stopping them.
Okay, so right, so that may not be practical, but if it's preferable to stop them without killing them, then I presume I'm gonna have to take that to mean that killing them is a disadvantage of this approach, right?
I suppose you could phrase it that way.
It, like, is there a better way to phrase it?
I don't know. I wouldn't really see it as. Hmm. Hmm. I don't think. I don't think I've really thought about the semantics of this discussion before.
Well, I am trying to be to ask provocative questions to get us to think more about stuff like this, right?
Yeah, I would
Do,
think killing somebody is a disadvantage. So sure.
wait, wait, did you say you do or you don't think that killing someone is a
I would think that it is a disadvantage, but I think in this specific scenario, it's more advantageous than disadvantageous.
Okay, so like and this is because you think there's no way to stop them without killing them, and stopping them is more important than the value of their life. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Do you have an opinion on the like interpersonal version of this question? Like let's say two of your friends are in some kind of conflict with each other. When should you intervene in that, and when should you not?
I'd say it really depends on how you feel about that situation and how much it affects you. Uh, like if you like both of those friends and you like hanging out with them a lot and they're having like a serious conflict, it would probably behoove you to try to mediate between those two. But if it's not like a serious like fucking world-ending thing, I don't think it'd probably be a good idea to try to mediate it. Just let them hash it out themselves.
Okay. When do you think you have your how do I put this? How do you figure out whether or not to expect that your intervention will be effective in helping them end the conflict?
Now that is a really hard question to answer because it's really hard to.
Good. I like asking hard questions.
I don't know. You really need to know the two specific people because it's really dependent on the personalities of the people involved. Because some people just do not want to listen to advice from other people.
Uh-huh.
So it would have to be somebody that you've known for a while and you've had dealings with them before, where you know like the way they respond to different stimulus and different rhetorical devices.
Do you think it would be fair to say that like what you're saying almost kind of amounts to like they have to trust you, or is that not it?
Yeah, I would say you definitely need a certain degree of trust, but there's also the some people just won't listen to other people on some topics.
Mm-hmm. Uh Okay, so then let's say you've come across a situation where the people involved trust you, and so you feel like they'll listen to you. Then what do you do to intervene? What do you think is the best way to?
I think probably the best way would be to ask questions of the person, find out exactly why they feel the way they feel, and then utilize that information in talking to the other person to try to get them to understand the feelings of the other individual.
Okay, so you want to like get them to understand each other better.
Yeah, and most likely do that before like trying to get them together to actually talk about it.
Uh-huh. And I guess is that probably because when they try to talk about it before, they that resulted in them being heated, and so you think you need to like try something different? Is that the idea?
Yep.
Okay. Have you been in this situation before a lot or no?
Oh, I don't think I've really been in that situation before because I've never really. Let me think. When you ask personal questions about non-specific events, it's really hard to answer because my memory's shit. I smoked a lot of weed when I was a teenager. I think I've probably been in the situation before, but I don't really have like specifics to give.
Okay. Um, or have you seen this situation come up with other friends? Like, I guess all I'm trying to get at is like, do you have any like personal experiences that give you any insight into the workings of this, like mediated conflict resolution?
No, the only real insight I have into it is I've read about like effective communication before, and I've employed some of those strategies in trying to get like other people to understand where I'm coming from or why the things they said upset me. And I've tried employing those personally in my interpersonal connections, and they seem to work very well. And I know how to make people enjoy conversation with me. So I understand those aspects, but that's pretty much all I understand about it.
Okay. Do you want to share some of those strategies for anybody who's listening? Maybe they can learn something from you.
Well, one of the major strategies for like getting people to like you is to ask somebody a question and then let them talk about it and then listen to what they're saying and ask follow-up questions about it so they can expound on that topic. Like if you get somebody talking about something they're passionate about and you demonstrate that you're listening to what they're saying and you demonstrate that you want to know more of what they're talking about, they will fucking love you for it.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that one very much. I think people really appreciate curiosity, and I think when I talk to people, I always hope that they'll go away from the conversation feeling like listened to and understood and cared for. But
Yeah, and the best way to approach an apology is kind of similar. You need to figure out what exactly it is you're apologizing for, and you need to figure out why what you did upset that person. And at no point make excuses for yourself, but rather just explain like this is why you felt the way you did. This is why I know it was wrong of me to do, and I'm sorry I did that.
uh-huh.
And that is one of the most effective apologies you'll ever give. And unless you have like a history of doing this kind of thing over and over again and never changing, then 9 out of 10 times it's going to be accepted by the person you're talking to, and they're going to really appreciate you for it.
Okay. So what you want to do is kind of like well, I don't know. I had an impulse to say like don't try to save face with it, but in a way like an apology is kind of a face saving thing. But I guess don't try to like overly identify with the version of you that did the bad behavior, right? Like uh
Yeah, you kind of need to separate your action from yourself, but take responsibility for that action.
right. Okay. So like distance yourself from the action and go like, yeah, I screwed up, and I intend to make it right, and I want to repair the relationship, and I understand what I did wrong, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the more specific you can get about why it was wrong, probably the more effective the apology will be.
Hmm. Well, and I would think like also, like you said earlier, the more it identifies with the other person's point of view on it, right?
Mhm.
Um, like like it could be a matter of like why is what I did wrong from my own point of view, but I think it's going to be especially helpful if if I can understand why you think it was wrong.
Yeah, understanding why the other person is upset by what you did and being able to demonstrate that in a clear and effective manner is it shows that you have an understanding of this person and that you recognize the actions you've done have hurt them, and showing that you recognize that is very essential to any effective apology.
Hmm. Yeah. I agree with that. I think the idea there is that it demonstrates you care enough about that person and you respect their boundaries might be a way of putting it. Although that's a little bit of like a pop psych way of putting it, but hopefully you get what I'm saying there. Like,
Yeah, and you can totally be lying when you do it.
oh yeah, this reminds me of like there's a thing that Destiny used to say. So maybe he probably still says this. I don't know. I don't watch him anymore. But like but he used to say this thing about like apologies are basically worthless, and then his reason for it was because people can lie when they're giving an apology. And I always thought that was like such a dumb take. Like how can you like yeah, people can lie when they say anything. Like that doesn't mean that everything people say is worthless. But
Yeah, like if somebody apologizes to me and just says, "I'm sorry I did X thing," I don't think that's a good apology. But if somebody can demonstrate that they understand why what they did was wrong and why it hurt me, then I think that's far more effective. And I think even psychopaths like Destiny would accept that apology generally.
I don't know. Maybe I don't want to speculate on what apology he would accept or what he wouldn't. But I would say like when you were saying just saying here's what I did and I'm sorry for it isn't a good apology. I think that's still better than nothing though, right? It's just
Uh,
maybe this isn't as good of an apology as one that shows a like deeper level of understanding. But
I don't know. I feel like if somebody apologized to me that way, I know it would piss me off because I've had people apologize like that before, and it pisses me off even more.
like you would rather that they not apologize to you at all rather than do that?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know when somebody because it just seems like they're trying to fix something without understanding why it broke.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, like why is that worse than just not apologizing at all? Like
I,
I, sorry, go ahead.
it feels more honest.
Okay, so basically, what you think is that like somebody who says that probably isn't really sorry for what they did. They probably just want the conflict to end.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I would sort of take that kind of an apology as like this could be the beginning of the repair process or the beginning of a conversation, right? Like if they actually just say that and want that to be the end of it, like then my problem with it is not that they said that, it's that they think that that's the end of the issue.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
Um, I mean, of course, there are some people who are too proud to ever apologize, basically, right? Like their pride, their ego, or whatever gets in the way of it. Or they just don't even care at all to understand things from the other person's point of view, right? So
Ah,
even by just giving like a very basic, rudimentary, begrudging apology, you're at least setting yourself apart from the crowd of people who won't apologize at all, right? And I think that is still something of a meaningful distinction.
ah. I don't know. I think the type of person who won't apologize has like there's a certain there's a certain appeal to that. Like I like when you said that earlier, it reminded me of Trump.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like
there.
people like the people who like him call him an honest liar, and there's a reason they like that in him.
Um, Trump is very good at projecting confidence, and I think that's like what the biggest appeal of him, right? It's like he's good at projecting confidence, and he also triggers the libs or whatever, right? Like this, I think this is like the some of the main reasons why people like him. And then there's other reasons too, like that there are people who would say that that he's different from other politicians, which is like true, or that he's like pays attention to like issues that other people don't pay attention to. Like these things are all true about him, right? So there are, I don't know, but I get
I,
what. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. It just seems like any time I've ever had somebody be an asshole to me and then apologize for it in a weak way, it's just pissed me off, and it made me remember like. I was working and there was a guy who was treating me and my coworkers like shit and acting like we were all unintelligent or something. And then like he made a weak apology to me and then made like an excuse for his apology. And it just made me so angry at this man. Uh, I just can't see a situation in which somebody made like a very weak apology to me and then I would respect them for it. I would have far more respect for somebody who was just unequivocally an asshole and made no excuses for being an asshole.
Why is that better?
I don't know if I would say it's morally better, but like it makes me feel better about that person because they aren't just like a they're honest about who they are is kind of what I would say.
And honesty is more important than like kindness or something like that.
I would just say those kinds of apologies are a lot more deceitful, and I have a really I don't know deceit when it comes to somebody like that. It comes off in a very bad way to me, and it makes me quite ragey.
Hmm. Okay. Uh, let's maybe do like one more question and then be done if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Um, let me see. Okay, if you could abolish one technology, what would you, or would you? Would you choose to do one or no?
If I could abolish one technology,
Yeah.
hmm. The first thing that comes to mind is like nuclear weapons, but then again, I think they've created a lot of stability.
Hmm.
Oh,
It makes sense why that might be a plausible answer though, because like we've kind of got this like sort of Damocles hanging over the whole world at all times, right? And like even if they've created stability so far that they might someday be the end of us all, right?
yeah, well, I think we could do the same thing with conventional weaponry.
I actually don't think we could.
Why
I mean,
not?
well, I mean, obviously you can mass murder a lot of people with conventional weaponry. I don't doubt that, but could you like end the human species with conventional weaponry? I actually don't think so.
Well, I don't think you could end the human species with nuclear weaponry either.
Oh, I'm quite confident that you could.
I don't want to argue with that statement because you're like a physician.
Well, physics, yeah, physics is my educational background. Um, but like, here's the thing: is like the world's stockpile of nuclear weapons is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30,000 ish nuclear weapons, right? So I'm just imagining like what is going to be the effect of the world if 30,000 nuclear weapons go off. I think it would be an ecological disaster unlike anything else we've ever seen.
Yeah, but I don't think it would end humanity. I think there would still be pockets of civilization.
Would there? I guess the thing I would be worried about is mass starvation. like, is there even going to be like food and water that's safe to consume after 30,000 nuclear bombs go off, or is just the whole planet going to be so radioactive that
I mean,
that
I don't think nuclear weaponry. I don't think it depends on. I don't think they could cover like all of society with nuclear radiation.
um why do you think they couldn't? I mean, they're like, okay, I guess you're familiar with some of the like nuclear disasters that have occurred, like Chernobyl, of that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I know a decent amount about Chernobyl.
Yeah, yeah. And so, like, the entire, like, there's like an exclusion zone around Chernobyl where it's just unsafe for anyone to even go into, and they do sometimes do like, short like incursions into it, for scientific research or whatever, but it's a completely like not safe place to inhabit, right?
Yeah, but there's a difference between that and nuclear weapons because most of the nuclear weapons are designed to either drop at ground level or drop above. For example, like Hiroshima and Nagasaki are completely habitable now.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, those ones are fine, but like all those are also like a totally different weapon from the more modern ones that we have. I mean,
yeah, you
the
go
more
ahead.
modern ones that we have are still like, they come from like the 1960s or whatever. We haven't really like been building bigger nuclear weapons since then, um but they're like thousands of times more powerful, and we have 30, we the human species have like 30,000 of them or something like that.
Yeah, but I think nuclear reactor melting down and like seeping into the ground the way it did in Chernobyl, I think is a lot different than the type of nuclear reaction that occurs with modern weaponry like that.
Yeah, I mean, the more modern ones are mostly hydrogen bombs, but I mean, but even like nuclear power plants, they produce waste, right? And that waste can be radioactive for thousands of years, right?
And it's stored on site in most occasions.
And they bury it deep underground, right? But
I don't think they really do. I think they mostly just keep it where it is because like nobody wants that.
um, well, anyway, okay. So if not nuclear weapons, like what is there a different technology that you would maybe want to get rid of?
Now, okay, I was trying to figure one out, but that was the only one that popped into my head, and I don't really even know if I'd want to get rid of that. Yeah, I can't really think of a technology that I would just want to completely get rid of.
Okay, so if your point about nuclear weapons is that they've created a lot of stability, do you have that same view of like pretty much all weaponry? Like the fact that guns exist, do you think that's like, has a lot to do with like lowering the amounts of violence in our society because it's more risky to do it or something like that?
No, the only one I would have that opinion on is nuclear weaponry.
Why would nuclear weaponry be? I mean, I understand it's like a worldwide existential threat, right? But a gun is still like a personal level existential threat. So why wouldn't it have the same impact on an individual that nuclear weaponry would have on a nation?
Maybe because nuclear weaponry and the way it's been portrayed in the media is a terrifying concept, like the most terrifying thing somebody could actually think about. Whereas guns, most of the time, especially in America, people are around guns all the time, and most of them don't really see it as like an immediate, like, oh, I'm going to die now.
Yeah, I mean, if you get shot, there's like a 30% chance that you die.
Yeah,
But
but I'm
that,
talking about just like being around guns.
uh-huh. I mean, isn't that like really, let me think, how do I put this? Oh, well, okay. Would you want guns to not exist, or do you think it just doesn't matter that much, or do you think it's good that they exist, or
Well, I think we kind of need them to like control like populations of wildlife effectively.
I mean, surely we're capable of hunting wildlife, without guns, right?
Yeah, but not as efficiently.
Does that efficiency really matter that much?
Hmm. I would need to look into how bow hunters handle deer. But I would,
I mean,
it's possible it doesn't matter.
you can use bows. You can also use like hunting dogs or things like that, right?
I think a deer would win in a fight against a hunting dog.
I mean, wolves do take down like packs of deer, right?
Packs of them.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That's what you normally do with hunting dogs, right? Is you get a pack of dogs to help you.
Oh, I thought you said wolves take down packs of deer.
Oh, no. Sorry. I meant like a pack of wolves it can take down a deer pretty easily, right?
Yeah, but they usually divert like one or two from a herd, and then they have like 6 or 7 take down like those two.
Yeah, for sure. But that's not terribly different from what you would do if you're just shooting them, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
I mean, you're not realistically going to go shoot the whole herd, right? Unless we should nuke the deer.
Let's nuke them.
Let's nuke them. Okay.
No, but I think like in 10 or 20 years, a technology that I would want to eliminate might be the combustion engine.
The combustion engine. Okay. So would you rather that it had never existed, or do you think it's good that we had it, but now it's outlived its time?
I think it was incredibly important to like the formation of major like industrial civilizations, but in like 10 or 20 years, I think we'll have the technology to start replacing it pretty much in its entirety. And I think getting rid of the combustion engine would be one of the most effective ways to combat climate change.
Okay, is it good that we have industrial civilizations?
Well, somebody talked about that once.
Lots of people have talked. Is this a Ted Kaczynski reference that you're making here?
Yeah. All I'm saying is that industrial society and its consequences, yada, yada, yada.
I've thought about covering that on stream, and so far I've decided against it, but...
It's got a banger of an opening line.
Does it? Okay. I should at least read it one of these days. I don't know if I'll ever do a stream about it. You know, another one that I've thought about covering on stream is the Scum Manifesto. Are you familiar with what that is?
Yeah, that was with that lady who stabbed Andy Warhol, right?
Did she stab Andy Warhol? Okay, I know she's like a radical feminist, and the Scum stands for Society for Cutting Up Men. And there's a radical feminist manifesto all about why we should like eliminate men from the earth. That's another thing I've thought about covering on stream, but so far I decided against it. But
I'm pretty sure she stabbed Andy Warhol. Let me Google this real quick.
Maybe so. I don't know that much about it. Okay, you got anything else you want to add or anything else before we're done?
No, I think we've covered quite a breadth of topics.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to promote, or do you want to like shout yourself out, or any social media or anything?
I'd like to promote hatred in general.
You like to promote hatred in general? Okay. So if you want to promote hatred in general, this is the Myopic Times here to represent hatred and hatred in general, I guess, which may or may not correlate to any specific instance of hatred you're trying to promote. And thank you for hanging out with me, and I'll see you around some other time. All right, bye.
Yeah, you have a good one, Cricket.